Welcome back, dear colleagues. I'm very happy for our discipline, so we start in time. However, we start a little bit with a distortion of an agenda, because I would like to propose to add a kind of follow-up to what yesterday we already discussed by a presentation, European Defence and Security, the role of European Defence Agency, the presentation made by its director, Emilio Fajardo. We thought that it would be good to as a follow-up, to highlight some practical aspects. So I would like then to invite Pavlina Markovska to do that. Oh, you are here. To highlight the challenges for auditing EDA operations, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for the organizer for this excellent event and network opportunity. And I think this is the first time that such an event has been organized and gathering trying to gather all the important actors in the defense policy, in the European defense policy area, but also the NATO, giving also the NATO perspective, the international perspective. I'll be short because my presentation was supposed to be given yesterday, more as a part of the panel discussion, but as we ran out of time yesterday, I'm honored now to give you a little bit more details on the European Defence Agency, more on the auditing provisions. I promise to be very short. I'll focus on the audit provision, who has the mandate to audit the European Defence Agency and the challenges that we face in auditing the EDA activities and operations. Yesterday, the director, Emilio, presented what is the main mission, what's the main mission of the agency, so I skip this part, as well as the three main missions that the agency has to deliver. He also presented this, but I just want to underline that the agency, the three main goals and tasks is to act as a planning and prioritization tool at the European level. He has to coordinate and to help the member states implement the project. So this is the second role of the agency. So it's a very operational point of view. It helps the member states to deliver the projects that they have committed to. And the third very important role of the agency is to be an interface between the European institutions. What it's meant by the interface is to manage the preparatory actions so far on defense on behalf of the Commission. So this is the delegated mandates that the agency has. I'll go through quickly through the figures, but the important points to take is that the agency is an intergovernmental agency. It's the agency of the Council, it's not an agency of the Commission. And it reports to the Council and receives guidelines from the Council. It is the only agency whose steering board is at the ministerial level. And it has 27 participating member states, except Denmark, and have administrative arrangements also with Norway, Serbia, Switzerland, and Ukraine currently. So as I promised, I will go through quickly the budget figures that Emilio also presented, but in general terms, the budget of the agency consists of the general budget, the budget associated with ad hoc projects, and ad hoc project, this is something that I learned when I went to the agency. Ad hoc projects are projects where the member state put budgets into in order to develop a capability or deliver a research project. It's a budget composed of participating member states. So there's two types of projects, category A projects and category B projects. Category A projects are where all 27 member states participate, and the member state who doesn't want to participate just opts out. This is an opt-out projects. And category B projects are where at least 2 member states decide to work on a particular project, being it in research or in capability, and they cooperate together, put budget together to develop the project. And additional revenue, this is another part of the budget, which is mainly member states' additional contribution to a specific project where they decide to participate with additional amounts, and the EC delegated budget on preparatory action and on defense research, where the agency received the mandate through a delegation agreement to manage this on behalf of the Commission. So, the main part of my presentation, I hope I stick to the 5 minutes. Probably I just have to go back. Oh, no, sorry. Too fast. No, I wanted to go back one, sorry. Probably here. I wanted just to go back to this one. So it's the previous one. No. Okay, that's my, you.
This is the one. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So just the two last slides. If you're wondering, especially if the court is wondering who is providing, who is controlling the agency in terms of external audit, why it's not the court. It is in the Council decision on the financial rules of the European agency that the external audit function is performed by the College of Auditors, which is composed normally of three professionals from supreme audit institution from the participating member states of the agency, and who are appointed by the steering board and reports to it. In the external audit function, it's on the operation, on all budgets of the agency. So the administrative budget, the operational budget linked to the ad hoc projects, and also to the additional revenue. So they audit annually these budgets and accounts. And the college is composed of 3 members who rotates normally every 3 years and they provide their opinion by 30 October, year plus 1, to the steering board, the steering board approves the annual accounts of both of the projects and the annual budget of the agency and gives discharge to the agency. The internal audit function is performed currently by me, so like with all the typical internal audit functions, there is the charter and mission, and also the code of ethics that governs the internal audit function. The internal audit function, the mandate and the role is to advise EDA on dealing with risks by issuing independent opinion. And I report directly to the chief executive and deputy chief executive, and then there's an annual report with a compilation of the audit recommendation that is also presented to the steering board with a summary of recommendations and the action plan to address this recommendation. The audits on the delegated budget, the preparatory action on defense and other delegated budget that the agency receives and has to implement. There is a provision that the Commission, including the European, the OLAF and the Court of Auditors, could audit this delegated budget at any time, and also including 5 years after that final payment have been done. The ad hoc budget, I already covered this. They are also subject to audit of the College of Auditors responsible for the general budget of the agency. What are the challenges? I think most of the challenges that I face in auditing the activities of the agency have already been outlined by the distinguished presenters and guests, but they are linked to the defense sector specificity, the long development cycle of the project, the defense cooperation specificities, the specificities in procurement that are linked to the defense directive, and then specifically to the audit of EDA is particularly difficult because of the 300 activities that the agency currently manages. Apart from the major prioritization instruments like CART, CDP, and PESCO, the agency ensures the secretariat of PESCO. It manages like around 160 ad hoc projects, and also operational budget projects, which represent mainly studies, but where the procurement rules are also difficult to audit. Another difficulty, which I think was already outlined in the presentation before, is that in the defense sector, there's a lot of stakeholders, diversity of stakeholders, participating member states, EU institution and agency with an increasing role and mandate, NATO partner organizations. So it's really difficult to manage stakeholder expectations and deliver on these expectations. So the agency, the diversity of the portfolio of the projects that the agency manages, so it manages projects in the research and technology, also capability projects, also major prioritization instruments, so this also poses a challenge. And then EDA, it's a small organization, small agency of 150 people, but has to ensure flexibility, expertise, and cost efficiency of operation, which is the final challenge in terms of resources. And with this, I'll close my presentation, and I hope that I've stuck to the 5 minutes. Thank you very much for the attention. I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Is there any questions from the audience? No, okay, so we thank you very much. Thank you. Now this brings us to another kind of follow-up again, which will be done by a trio of experts from OCCAR. Yesterday we listened to the presentation of its Director General on Alfonso Meirinho on European armament procurement. How does it work and what is the role of OCCAR there? And today we will have how the auditing of procurement is done in this organization. So the trio of experts is led by Mr. Guillaume Bigot, who has vast experience, I think, of more than 20 years in the Ministry of Defense and now of France, and now he is head of finance division at OCCAR. Konrad Heuer, legal advisor of the organization, and Maria Rucireta, chair of board of auditors. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Welcome to everyone. We have the challenging expose just after the lunchtime, but we try to make it passionating. We'd like to have to start with a short introduction to set up the scene quite quickly. We would like just to highlight industrial fact. We know as OCCAR, as procurement agency, we are in direct relation with industry. And you may know that it was a report done by the Commission, published very recently in March 2019, about foreign direct investment. This report has put on very recent and focused acquisitions from China on some European companies. And then the second thing also that is also maybe of interest is also to keep in mind this EDA report from last year on the key technologies. And this report, I just give you I think a highlight that could be also of interest is that this report said that the civilian part of it is driving the business for the industry. And then the last thing I would like to share with you is the expert group financial toolbox that was done under the lead of the Commission in the last year. And in this financial toolbox expert group, one of these already concrete aspect is the the increase of the financing by the European Investment Bank, that is on the other side of the street. So just to tell you that, to give you this very quick focus on the industrial part, there is really a role for EU to play in that field. If we are focused on of acquisition, is because we have very key technologies, we have strong industry. Therefore, as long as we are spied, it's because we have something to defend, and it's something therefore important to defend our industry in cooperation. And EU has certainly a role to play. So now, if I move on a little bit now only to the introduction of the exposé. So as I like my director yesterday, OCCAR is a lean and flexible organization. We have a European focus, although we are not belonging to the legally to the EU framework, but I think it's an asset for the European defense. As was explained yesterday, we have European nations participating in our program, but also non-European nations. Or non-EU nations. Therefore, it's for us the opportunity to highlight that limitation should not be bring too much by some legal framework like the EDF, and I think it's what some nation. I'm not even mentioning the Brexit. If Brexit happen, this third party, I think it's something that it's very important to keep in mind, especially in the context of OCCAR, on which we are European, but we are not only we don't have only EU nations. Last thing I would like to say also in just to move to the exposé, just to also to look at the what is the mechanism of this funding. We mentioned already yesterday. We have different actors. It was said in the introduction by Mr. Metzger. We have different actors, nations, multilateral cooperation. It should not be seen as an opposition. Each of these partners have a role to play. I take one example again on the industry. They have association like the ASD association that have very tiny knowledge of their national industry. And while we have a very also useful mechanism through the DIDP and EDF, on which, without going to the detail, nations have a word to say in approving the work plan. So this shows you hopefully in very few words that these pieces goes together, and this is why in OCCAR we try to demonstrate that there is we should see this as a together, and rather bringing limits or barrier to that to this framework. Okay, and last thing I would like to highlight also as a reality, this EDF, of course, this in the D you have the development, you have the R&D window as has been presented to you, but you have also nations that are buying off the shelf, and therefore this is something we should keep in mind. This is not because some of the nations buy off the shelf that they don't have a strong interest to participate and to be included in this R&D effort. That anyway and this is also, let's say, quite obvious for cooperation agency, but I want to remind to everyone, bringing the nation together, we also let's say contribute to synchronize the budget across these various nations. Now to the exposé itself. Just want to also, as a takeaway from yesterday, looking at the other organization, we recognize some similar issue in their accounting, like the combined budget ledgers and the various accrual accounting and cash accounting. And I would like to add on this that we have also recently taken care about the financial reporting versus the financial accounting, but we will come back to that in our presentation. What we try to do this afternoon on this presentation is to focus on the internal control and audit matters that will allow us to touch quickly the key accountings policies of OCCAR. But red line for us is to present, and I think it's of interest of all the audience, to put in perspective what the financial audit is providing to OCCAR through our board of auditors. because it's for us, it's part of the OCARE overall business and internal control framework, and this is what my colleague will expose you in the part 1 of the exposé. And then I will try to tackle the issues that are mentioned in the invitation of this workshop, so namely reporting to the stakeholders, mandate and access of audit teams, transparency on procurement data. And then finally it will be part 2, and then the part 3. I'm very pleased to have on my side our BOA chairman that will express auditors' view and illustrate the partnership and excellent networking that we have with the BOA. As I say, as I told to the BOA since I arrived in 2016, I'm the so-called chief finance officer, but so I'm a leader. But of course, I need advice and to be surrounded, and it's having the taking benefit of very experienced staff like auditors is something that I claim to integrate in the framework of management of OCAR, but at the same time, I need also to protect OCAR business, meaning I have day-to-day business to be done, and therefore I need to make sure that the audit is taking the right workload of the teams. Konrad, can I give you the floor on the part 1? Thank you.
Okay, this is a PDF. So do we have the
Let me see.
PowerPoint? Do we have the PowerPoint presentation?
C'est un PDF.
Il faut qu'on fait.
Ok. Parce que moi, c'est pas là, je présente this PowerPoint.
Just like this. Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not.
Using the opportunity while the technical arrangements are made, I want to remind you that all the presentations and slides will be on our website.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Just some technical issues, but it will work. So I would like to present myself quite briefly. I'm the OCAR legal advisor, and you might ask, so why is a legal advisor from OCAR here? But you will see later on. And I would just introduce our integrated business management framework, and then a short overview of our OCAR internal control process. So I would like to start with the OCAR integrated business management framework. And of course, as a lawyer, I like some definitions, but it's quite helpful to make a difference between quality management and the quality management system. So what is the difference? A quality management is just a part of a quality management system. It's only focuses on a service product to be built and delivered according to a specification, on time and at the appropriate cost. So, for instance, it's a procurement contract. Whereas the quality management system focuses on the adequate operational and organizational structure in order to run successfully the organization's business, and that the organization is prepared for the future. So you see there's a huge difference between these two definitions, and this is called our OCAR business management system, which is a quality management system. This is just important to make some definitions clear to everybody. So where does it all come from? Of course, above is our OCAR convention. Our director yesterday explained to you the convention is a treaty. And in the treaty, we have one article which clearly says that the OCAR EA director shall be directly responsible to the Board of Supervisors for the operation of the executive agency. So the detailed responsibilities shall be specified in a document approved by the BOS. So what is this document? It's a so-called OMP, it's an annex of our OCAR management procedure. So we have several management procedures which are derived from the convention and are approved by the Board of Supervisors. And one of these annexes in this OMP3 is are the terms of references of the OCAR EA director. And there it's clearly said that the OCAR director has to manage OCAR EA in an efficient, effective, and timely manner to meet the objectives specified by the Board of Supervisors. And it's also said that this responsibility includes the implementation of an effective management control system. And what is this effective management control system? There we have another decision of the BOS. And the OCCA member states decided in 2002 and 2003 to establish an effective management control system within the agency, which is based on the ISO 9001 framework, which means what the director already said yesterday, we are ISO 9001 certified. So, this is, let's say, the full picture of our integrated business management framework. Just to give some short hints. Sorry, yeah, now I have it. So here we have, of course, the staff members. Then we have our customers, which are the member states and the program participating states. And we have some other stakeholders, for instance, EDA and SPA contractors. So they are all contributing to OCCA EA, to the business management framework. And then you can see what we have to do. It comes from the convention. Then we have some mission, vision, values, strategic aims, quality measures. And then you have to see how is it done. And this is also defined in these OMPs, BOS decisions. Then it's more detailed in other documents, internal procedures, internal guidelines. Then we have policy papers, strategic papers, conceptual papers, some divisional instructions. This is the process model, and altogether is in line with the ISO 9001 requirements. And you cannot see it quite sharp on the screen, but one important thing is, for instance, I have to see it here. Yeah, it's the risk. It's the white thing. So we have a dedicated risk management system established within OCCA EA, and this is very important for us. Okay, this should be enough for this part. Then I would like to talk about OCCA's internal control process. So we have, again, one definition. We have a definition of internal control, and where does it come from? It comes from more or less from the INTOSAI definition, the International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions, and it's written above, but we made, let's say, more or less a summary of this. And so for us, internal control is, as defined in accounting and auditing, a process for assuring achievement of an organization's objectives in operational effectiveness and efficiency, reliable financial reporting and compliance with laws, regulations, and policies. So we tried to put everything into one definition so that we have a common understanding within the organization about internal control. So then, of course, we have an internal control process. I don't want to go too much into detail, but the internal control process is, of course, our ultimate integrator of the business management concepts, methodologies, procedures, and tools. And it's very important that the internal control is designed to provide reasonable assurance that our objectives are being achieved. And so this cube shows some dimensions and for instance, objectives. What are our objectives? Only one example. We have strategic objectives, which are the so-called, amongst others, high HLOs. These are the high-level objectives, which are defined for each program. And of course, this is one objective. This has to be reached. And how can this be reached? We have, as I said before, we have a dedicated risk management system in our organization. We have control activities and monitoring. And on the right side, you see, of course, the entities of OCCA EA, which are responsible for the performance. And these are, for instance, central office or the program divisions for the special programs. Okay. Yes, this is something that might be most interesting to you, because the 3 lines of defense model, I think, is well known in the audit world. And then I come to the part where I explain why I am here as a legal advisor of OKIA. So it's more or less a picture of our organization. So you have above you have the Board of Supervisors, then the Future Task and Policy Committee, and our top management, director and deputy director. And then you have 3 lines of defense. The first line of defense, which is more let's say the operational parts. So we have the program divisions. So the program divisions are, of course, responsible for the management of their programs, and the program manager is responsible for the management of the program to the director and the program participating states. So this is the operational level. Then we have the second line of defense, which says more or less that we have some standard setters within central office who are responsible for the procedures. And then we have the third line of defense. So this is let's say the independent part. The legal advisor is the OKIA internal audit coordinator. I'm not an auditor, but I'm the internal audit coordinator, and we have a team with internal auditors which are educated as auditors, and altogether we perform the third line of defense. And what does it all mean? So the 3 line of defense model just wants to make clear responsibilities of control and risk management within the organization, so that everybody can see where his place is in the organization to follow a control and risk management process. So then we have some external audits possible, but this is more or less linked to the next part. Just some details, because we already talked about internal audits this morning. So what is the special thing of OKIA's internal audit process? So for every year we have an internal audit strategy, and its corresponding results allow the OKIA director to provide to the BOS, to our Board of Supervisors, an opinion on the adequacy, effectiveness, and efficiency of our organization. Then, of course, the internal audit function within OKIA contributes to the performance evaluation of our organization, and we can also identify by this way some areas for improvement. Maybe one important thing, it's our policy to undertake the management of the internal audit function from within existing resources of our functional organization. So we have two dedicated staff members, which are not only internal auditors, but they are educated as internal auditors, and they do it in addition to their normal job. Then we, of course, want to highlight that our internal audits are conducted under the authority of our director. And this is, I think, more or less why I, as legal advisor, was proposed to be the internal audit coordinator, because I have to report directly to the director, and a legal advisor has to be independent per definition, and it's also part of my job description. Yes, and of course, very important for our organization is integrity and transparency. These are some of our major values, and in case of frauds or suspicion of frauds, the internal auditors shall report to the director. And we also have a dedicated internal procedure in place to prevent fraud and corruption, some instruments like a hospitality book, and yeah, we are well prepared to prevent fraud and corruption. So this was my part, and Guillaume, over to you.
It works down? Oh, yes, okay. So part 2, yeah, okay. So just look at the time. I will move quickly to the first slides. That just you will recognize for the one that are used to IPSAS. You have a duo, normal duo in accounting. You have the general director, the central head of finance. So this is a little bit what our convention is reflecting there. So you have the director having the authority to manage the financial matters, and then some delegation to the head of finance. And just moving to that one as well, just to highlight the internal control bit on this one exactly. So it's part of our OCCAR financial management rule, on which we have some, after Konrad presented you the general framework, we have of course dedicated financial internal control, like segregation of duties, management of access rights to the system. So I don't develop. You are very familiar to the CUSO matrix. This is nothing special there. Just want then to focus on the two last one on my part that are more specific and probably of interest of the audience. So the first one is the accounting procedure, on which we have in OCCAR then what we call two sections. The section 1 is IPSAS accrual based, on which we are principal, and on the section 2 we are acting as agent. And one of the trigger of this distinction is according to our convention, we are owning assets under the administrative budget, but we don't under the operational budget. So that's one aspect, and this I think something to be keep in mind when for the part 3 about the audit. Then, as I promised you in the introduction, in this slide, I would like to do my best to tackle in few words some of the introduction of this workshop. So what we have done in OCCAR to manage the evidence and reporting. So what and this is something we have done in the very last years. So we're starting as a starting point. We discussed that already. Classification of information. That's an issue. Therefore, this, especially on the program, and after what I told you in the introduction, there's a lot of nations that will be very much interested about knowing what we are committing, what we are paying, if we have delays, and this kind of information should remain protected. However, we had to find a way ahead and a middle way, and what we have done, we have basically segregated the information between what we have called the streamlined part, and for this part, we are very much looking at the financial accounting part to be able to publish this data, because maybe if you are curious, you may have Google OCCAR and you were disappointed maybe not to find our financial statement, because for the time being it's not allowed to publish them. But this is why we have done that, to be able to publish them, of course, because it's an important document. And then secondly, we have kept the detail, because the detail is very important for our customer. As Konrad showed you, our nations are our customer, and therefore we need to provide them with the relevant level of information. You may remember this morning comments of a national control general, so the nations are very much interested to get the insight into this program, and this is why this detailed information is provided to the people in the given program of OCCAR, and therefore the output of this let's say works have been to segregate this information between the financial statement and the program, what we call the program financial management report. Then of course the next question you are going to ask me is, okay, it's fine, but you are adding something to your auditors, or you are doing two sets of documents that don't talk to each other. Of course not. So what we have done, we use and we demonstrate to our auditors. We use the same level of the same set of data. So therefore we don't reconcile anything. It's just a matter of filtering. So there is if you have some detail of information on the PFM, I give you the bottom line of this information, or the summary, and this goes into the financial statement. But the auditors, they have access to this information when they audit the program. And then we have added also non-cash information, again at that level of detail, to make sure that our auditors have the right level of access. And this brings me to my last slide. Because why of this? Because the interest of this is also to let's say to have a way agreed with our BOA, not to frustrate them, to allow them to have all the access, and this is according to Intosai their right to have. But we have introduced then this in their terms of references. Appropriate level of access means that when they are auditing this detailed information, they are constituting of the team of this auditor. They are of the same nation participating to that program. So meaning that then we have no issue about potential, breach of information or problem of sensitive information, and then therefore it allows them, and hopefully on the last part there will be confirmation for the chairman. It allows them to have access, the access they request and they require on this information. Right, so that's all I wanted to tell you for this afternoon, and I will just maybe come back to the question of this morning after part 3, when we are going to be happy to take your questions. Very honored and pleased to give the floor to our BOA chairman. Thank you.
It's the same one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
How can I move?
Yeah.
You have to reach 17. So, good afternoon. I'm a judge from the Italian Corte dei Conti, but I also have strong connections with the ICA because it is the place where I happened to spend 10 years of my professional life. So I'm particularly grateful of this opportunity, of being given this opportunity today. Time to move to the OCCAR Board of Auditors. Our reference is Article 36 of the OCCAR Convention, according to which the annual accounts shall be submitted to the audit authorities appointed by the Board of Supervisors, which is the governing body of the organization. Such a concise text leaves a number of questions open. First of all, about the format of those audit authorities which are mentioned. Second, about the role, about the reporting line. And third, about the scope of our mandate. Let's start from the third question, the scope of our mandate. Article 36 is clearly provides a legal basis for financial audits because it refers to annual accounts, which are of course the subject of financial audits. But what about performance audits? They are covered by another provision, by Article 47 of the OCCAR Convention. The Board of Supervisors may order an inspection or audit which it considers necessary to improve the functioning of the organization and the conduct of the programs. This wording is not quite satisfactory from an external auditor point of view. Any order can be seen as a breach of our independence. So, but irrespective of the wording, I can tell you that we never received any order that this has never occurred, that we are ordered to perform an audit or whatever. The issue remains of performance audits because we, as a board, think that this is an essential part of the reasonable assurance of reaching a reasonable level of assurance. So we have tried to find a way to perform, to also perform performance audits or deal with performance matters. And this is based on a clause of the terms of reference that enable the Board of Auditors to also cover the effective, efficient, and economic use of resources. So the BOA decided to address performance issues as well with prior communication to the Board of Supervisors. This was the case. We took these initiatives I may give two examples. This was the case for a special report on the OCCAR internal audit arrangements that we issued in 2016, and for a management letter on the new enterprise resource planning system that we issued in 2017. So these arrangements allow enough freedom for the Board of Auditors to report in the manner that we feel the most appropriate for the external auditor of an international organization. So to answer the other questions about format and about the reporting line, we have to refer to the terms of reference and read them in combination with the convention. Under the terms of reference, membership of the board comprises one representative from each member state, designated by its supreme audit institution. So we have a response on the format. We are a collegiate body. We adopt a collegial decision-making process when adopting our reports. We always try to find consensus. We endeavor to find consensus. Audits of the OCCAR programs can also be performed by national auditors on a national basis. This is provided for in another article, Article 44, which stipulates that in the context of their duties as regards their national administrations and with a view to reporting to respective parliaments, national auditors may obtain all information and examine all documents held by the executive agency which relate to the programs in which their member states are participating. So, of course, the practical aspects of these needs to be coordinated with the director, but in accordance with this article, unrestricted access may be granted to national auditors. A recent example was the report issued by the French colleagues of the Cour des Comptes on the bilan industriel des coopérations européennes, which compared the activity performed by OCCAR as a delegated contracting authority with other collaborative defense acquisition programs, and concluded that OCCAR provided a better framework for effective cooperation. Here, I have just highlighted some elements of our modes of operation. Of course, others could be mentioned. We have a risk-based audit strategy. We plan our audit of the financial statements to respond to the risks of material misstatement and material irregularity. And this is made clear to the auditee in our audit strategy report issued in October each year. There we set out how we have built our assessment of risk, what we base our materiality on, those risks we expect to be significant, and how we plan to respond to these risks. Another element is methodology. Assurance is obtained from the review and testing of controls and from substantive testing of sample transactions. We use analytical procedures to assess the reasonableness of the figures presented for audit and the effectiveness of key internal controls. If needs arises, this leads us to increase the level of sample testing to be subsequently performed. Another highlight, we perform regular follow-up. The agency produces an action list to monitor progress made on the implementation of our recommendations, and we provide our view on the action taken on an annual basis when we issue our audit reports. So what are we expected to produce as a board? The terms of reference say that the board shall be responsible to the Board of Supervisors to carry out an annual audit of the financial statements of OCCAR and to render annual audit opinion and long-form report detailing audit observations and recommendations. So this helps us respond to the question of our role and the reporting line. We assist the Board of Supervisors, we assist the governing, those charged with governance of the organization in discharging their responsibilities, their oversight responsibilities vis-à-vis the nations. And there's a direct responsibility towards the Board of Supervisors, including the right to communicate our reports directly to them. So the reporting line is through the Finance Committee, but we can also present the findings of our works directly to the Board of Supervisors. As for the structure of the audit opinion that we are asked to produce, we are supposed to produce. I must say that from January 2015, OCCAR has prepared its financial statements in accordance with IPSAS on an accrual basis. And this is section 1 of the financial statements, which is subject to a BOA audit opinion, an audit certificate. However, receipts and payments related to the operational budget are not included within OCCAR's financial statements and therefore are not subject to this audit opinion. This is based on OCCAR's assessment that the transactions undertaken have the features of an agent relationship. OCCAR acts within the operational budget in all cases in the name of and on behalf of the nations, and in no case does it become owner or receive any kind of goods or services. So OCCAR include cash-based, modified cash-based disclosures with the transactions undertaken on behalf of the nations within an annex to the financial statements. These disclosures are subject to agreed assurance procedures in line with the testing performed in the years before that move to accrual accounting, and a separate opinion is provided by the board. This opinion on section 2 covers the cash receipts and payments, the cash flow by nation, the cash flow by program, and the operational budgets versus payments by nation. A new area of risk has been identified in our last audit strategy report with regard to section 2 operational disclosures, since it is prepared on a basis where there is no clearly defined framework. And this lack of a defined framework may result in a number of risks in terms of understandability of the figures, completeness, and also consistency across programs. I picked up some findings reported in our latest audit reports that I thought might be of interest for this audience. From the audit report for 2016, we observed a limited flexibility in the budgetary approval process, which resulted in a tendency for programs to overstate budgets to avoid future approvals, and this limited OCCAR's ability to implement effective financial management. Whilst realistic budgets should be set and they should be updated where there is a need to do so to reflect new business information throughout the year. Another point, the management of call for funds, also from the audit report for 2016. Call for funds are often raised in advance of needs, resulting in OCCAR holding significant bank balances on behalf of nations. while there have been no call for funds that exceed the approved budget, there have been instances of nations increasing their budgets at year end to enable the call for funds to be raised. Or there have been instances of call for funds not really connected with the actual needs of the programs. So the process, we recognize that OCCAR has a limited power to refuse the request of nations in this respect, but there's room to strengthen the process of call for funds. Internal audit arrangements. I mentioned that we issued a report, especially a performance report on these arrangements. We follow up this issue in our long-form reports, where we tend to introduce also performance matters. In the performance audit issued in 2016, we expressed concern about the lack of a proper internal audit function in OCCAR. Things have moved since that, but we continue to emphasize the importance of having a sound internal audit strategy focused on the organization key risks, which of course are within the program divisions, because it is there that the significant element of OCCAR's activity takes place. Another issue, reconciliation of bank accounts, but okay, I skip it if I. Okay. No. Yeah, this is another example of an initiative taken by the Board of Auditors to help drive improvement in the organization. A new enterprise resource planning system is planned to be implemented very soon. And we produced a management letter at the very beginning of the process to raise some concerns about the implementation and management's governance of the project. The key areas requiring management attention included lack of a sufficiently detailed business case to support the business need, the need for a clear timeline for the project, identifying success criteria and benefits, business transformation impact on processes, lack of lessons learned from the previous system implementation, a risk of discontinuity. So we hope we play a proactive role in the life of the organization in this way and with our work. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now we still have time for some questions from the audience. Yes. Okay.
No, I have a question concerning the reports of the Board of Auditors of OCCAR. I would like to know the accountability line. I mean, what happens once the report is completed and submitted? Is sent to any national parliament? Is discussed at that level?
No, the reports are intended for the Board of Supervisors. So, and they are not published. The national parliament know about this, the activity performed by OCCAR in the framework of the Ministry of Defence accounts. That's why there is a provision, which I mentioned, on the possibility to have national audits. I mean, audits performed on a national basis. So these are two, another kettle of fish. I mean, these are two different things.
Mr. Metzger.
Yes, I had a question about the convention for the Board of Auditors. Sorry, again, I have two questions, but again, you may pick the one you prefer. The first one is about Article 44, audit by national auditors. How does it accord with the single auditor principle? That is a basic principle for the external audit of public entities. And the second question is about a wording that I don't exactly remember, which was somewhat Board of Supervision, audits, assessments or audits, etc. And doesn't it interfere with the basic principle of independence of the Board of Auditors, which is set by the International Standards 5000 specifically?
Article 44. Here again, the issues are clearly different. I mean, we are basically mandated to perform financial audits on the annual accounts of OCCAR. What is interesting on a national basis is another, maybe other issues, other points, other interests. So the issue of single audit has never come to the light, to light. I mean, I suppose that we might coordinate in the event of our performing a performance audit on the same matters as a national supreme audit institution, but it has never occurred so far. So I might speculate on that, but I have no clear response. For the wording, I was the first one to raise the issue. I mean, order is a totally unsatisfactory wording for auditors. That here again, nobody has ordered anything to us. We tend to think that it might be a request, for instance, perhaps a request, but we, as auditors, of course, have in mind our independence. We cannot just jump on a subject because somebody has ordered us to investigate on this subject. And the way we have found is to decide on an issue or performance audit, and then inform the board of supervisors, just telling them that we are going to investigate on a certain area. And they never, ever told us that we couldn't do that. So it's you're perfectly right. The wording is not happy, but in the real life, it didn't prove to raise real problems.
And one question concerning EU funds. First of all, what kind of contracts with which EU institution or organization do you have? Then the question would be, what are the rights or the possibilities of either the Commission, the Internal Audit Service, or the European Court of Auditors to audit the expenditure in relation to this project? It's also then interesting how far the auditors will have access to all the information necessary, because obviously you have a difference between your section, your own budget, and the budget you get from different nations.
Excuse me, sir. Could you kindly present yourself for the audience?
My name is Werner Geier and I work in the European Parliament.
Okay, so I take this one. So it's just for the time being my personal position. You know, we are still discussing with the Commission the implementation of the IDP and then furthermore the EDF. So the way I'm going to propose the Commission is to identify the European funding as a separate line in our accounts. So you will have it separated all the time. And then secondly, for the access of information, we are going to be audited by the auditors of the EU, as far as I understand. I mean, it will be outsourced to a private company, and they will come to us very soon. And based on this conformance audit, there will be only after that report that we'll get the final green light to get any funds from this EDIDP. So there will be a pre-compliance audit before we get anything. Then secondly, on the transparency, as I explained to you, for the time being, I'm going to propose to have an identify line, so therefore you will get a report like for any nation, it will be separated, and I will do this from day one, therefore there will be no issue. And then third, about the access of the auditors, for me the answer is very simple, because we are not going to decide anything. So it's in the regulation of the EDIDP, as you know. There's a clause to say that they have the right to access, and including the OLAF part. As I said at the beginning, as financial manager, my only issue is to make it work, and that I don't have auditors every day, because we have a business, we have a 4 billion business to run. But apart from that, there will be absolutely no limitation and no possibility from OCAR to limit the access and the mandate. They will apply their rule, and it's completely in line with the regulation. So that's I can guarantee you no issue on that foreseen.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. So then we thank cordially Madame Rucireta and Mr. Bigot and Mr. Heuer. Thank you very much for interesting presentation. And this leads now to the last name on our list of our guest speakers, Mr. Klaus Neumann, Head of Accounting on Rheinmetall. I think you're in a very privileged position to close the round of presentations and case studies. Everybody will remember you, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the possibility to talk to you here during this workshop. Let me introduce myself a little bit further. As mentioned, I had the accounting department of Rheinmetall. I'm in this function now for for 6 years. Before that, I worked as an auditor for KPMG in Germany and the UK, primarily on for large multinational groups and companies. So I have I've seen both sides of the accounting profession. I've seen the auditing side, and now I'm working for a business that is very accustomed to being audited, and as you will see, we have basically auditors in our house somewhere all the time, looking at all different parts of our activities. Let's get to start. I would like first to give a brief overview of Rheinmetall as a group, as a company, because it's somewhat different to all the public entities, agencies that we talked about during these 2 days. Also address what also the different function that audits has for Rheinmetall as a listed company. I will then provide a bit about our audit and financial control framework. Lots of things will be similar to what others have mentioned before, so we'll only focus on the things and aspects that I think are different to what has already been said. Afterwards, I'll like to look a little bit more on specific projects and all the controls and the review processes that exist around basically major projects, and we have quite a large number of those. And then in the last section, I'll talk about basically the practical challenges that we as a defense company face in basically running projects and providing relevant information on these projects, because it's getting more complicated over time. First, Rheinmetall is a company that has quite a long history with 130 years. The company was founded in 1889 in Düsseldorf, and this is still where the company headquarters are. We don't have any production now in Düsseldorf. That's all over the world, but the group headquarters are still in Düsseldorf. As mentioned, we are a listed company. We were part of the MDAX share index at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, and we basically operate in 2 divisions. One is automotive, and the other is defense. They are, from size and relevance, they are at the moment quite similar. So similar number of employees, similar level of revenues, and also similar global footprint. But yeah, going forward, considering this audience, I will focus on our defense business. Just to give you a bit of context, in 2018 we had sales of about 6 billion, with a result of roughly 500 million operating result, which is a adjusted EBIT. And we have 25,000 employees worldwide. And as you can see there, it's about half in the automotive business and half in the defense business. Roughly 3 billion revenues in both divisions, and all more or less the same number of employees. I mentioned the global footprint. This is basically all our sites that we have worldwide. We have a strong European focus, but especially in the last few years, we have expanded significantly worldwide. One of the key areas where we now have a strong presence is Australia, and I'll touch on Australia later on in my presentation, because our biggest current defense program is actually in Australia, and it's a Boxer program. So I'll talk about that program a little bit further later on. a little bit of history that might be also, will also explain some of the issues that we face in the defense division. Historically, Rheinmetall, as mentioned, is a German company, and also until early 2000s, it was basically just a German company. One of the first acquisitions was the defense business of Oerlikon that added a Swiss dimension, but it was still basically European focused. But over the following years, we acquired businesses in Norway, South Africa. We have a presence in North America, a couple of Asian countries, and now with a really strong presence in Australia. And during the time, we also expanded our presence within Europe, mainly driven by acquisitions, but one is in Austria with our truck business, our largest truck factory, and we also expanded in Europe following basically new European programs. I think we have also a significant capex, or the kind of investment of 100 million a year. That doesn't include basically all the money that we spent on research and development. At the end of 2018, we had for defense only an order backlog of about 8.6 billion euros. And as much, in addition to the capital expenditure, we spent about 4.4% of our revenues in R&D. That's as it will become important later. Our defense business is separate. Is kind of organized in three different divisions. One is focusing on weapons and ammunition, one is electronic solutions, and the third one is vehicle systems. Vehicle systems, as the name says, is merely a system-based business. We sell basically complete products, while the other two divisions, they also sell components. So weapon and ammunition basically contributes to many vehicle systems and other systems, and electronic solutions is basically electronic part. So that is also a component business, except for the integrated electronic systems also has some simulation, so that we have complete simulation solutions. That is basically just a variety, and I think the key point to take away is that we have a very broad spectrum of products and components that we produce that all flow into one product in the end that we sell to the customer. We sell lots of components as well, but when we produce a tank like the Boxer, lots of different components are produced by different parts of our business. And that will be one of the challenges that I'll talk about later on. So far, a very brief overview about Rheinmetall as a business, as a defense company. But as mentioned, the topic is now audit, financial control, and I give you a brief overview. We are a listed company, and as a listed company, we talk a lot to the capital market. We have every quarter we have performance reports or earnings reports that we issue and make publicly available. In addition to the long annual report that has about 250 pages, we have this quarterly report that we also talk about our performance in the different divisions, about our success in certain projects, and we present this annually to our annual general meeting of our shareholders. So there's a lot of information that is provided to the stakeholders throughout the year. Following each quarter, we have an analyst call, so they sometimes ask specific quite a lot of specific questions regarding certain projects, or about our performance. At the moment, the focus is very strong on our automotive business, because the automotive industry, especially in Europe, is having some issues. Don't want to go into detail, but in the years from 2012 to 2014, which were basically the years where the defense business was struggling, we had basically only questions on our defense business. In addition to the calls that are also recorded and the transcript is made public, we have roadshows where we also inform analysts about our performance, about specific issues of our strategy, about our products, and or other questions that they might be interested in. Again, this is all made public on our website. The reason that I mention all this is that it is, for us, is really important that we provide accurate and reliable information, financial information in all these communication. And that's the reason that we basically also have a kind of a strong control environment and framework. The 3 lines of defense that we just mentioned earlier as well, we have basically more or less the same concept. I, as basically the head of the accounting function, I am part of, for us, the first line of defense. I'm responsible for setting all the standards that need to be applied by the operational units and entities, but I'm also basically part of the second line as well, because I'm responsible for the internal control system around all the consolidation activities that we have to bring all the information that we get from our 100 entities worldwide to bring it together into one combined set of financial information. We have an internal audit department as well that is separate. It reports directly to the executive board. I said also aligned to the supervisory report in case there is a need for escalation. And we are, as I will explain later, we are audited regularly. At the moment, we have tendered our group-wide audit for 2020. So we're going to a tender process following the latest EU regulations. And we basically have all sorts of other requirements to consider and to comply with. And in addition to the financial auditors, there are lots of other auditors and reviews that take place. I mentioned that we basically have auditors in our companies more throughout the year. That gives you a little bit of an insight how it looks. We have the group audit, which is basically for our publicly made available financial statements under IFRS. It's a process that starts in September, around September, and basically ends with the publication in mid-March. The statutory audits sometimes take longer. We have a number of entities that are only audited for local statutory purposes and not for group reporting purposes. So we have kind of interlaced audit plan. We have the tax office that basically also looks at the numbers. They are present throughout the year, and we have also the internal audit view that follows the annual audit plan. The audit plan is prepared by the internal audit function. It is then discussed with our executive board and then presented to the supervisory board in November of each year, and then that is the basis for the audit work in the following year. Audit reports are and also basically shared and sent to the same group of people. So much for the general overview. That's basically how we have control and look at our information, how we produce our financial information, and I would now like to look a little bit more at the projects or programs. I think that is, in this context today, maybe of most interest. I would like start from basically the top level. We have a worldwide presence. We have large programs all over the world that are relevant for our overall performance. So our audit committee, which is a committee of the supervisory board, has also an interest in how these programs perform. So twice a year there is an additional report, a specific report on projects that is submitted to the audit committee. In addition to that, every quarter there is during the audit committee meetings there is the requirement that material events or development in projects is also reported as part of the financial reporting. And that is basically the top level is similar to the Board of Supervisories in the case of OCA. That is basically the representatives of our shareholders that look at our business, and then on the executive board, which is basically the top management level in our company, they also have look at this quarterly. They look at it for the whole group, and that is the executive board for the whole group. That is the board looking at both divisions, automotive and defense, so that also the automotive side looks at the performance of the defense business, and we have kind of a defense board, which is an executive board for our defense segment. They have monthly meetings first for the segment as a whole, but then they have 4 separate review meetings which take a day to look at the performance of each different division. So every month a different division is being reviewed, and so every division gets 4 reviews a year. In addition to that, then there are what we call key projects reviews, when we have twice a year an additional review cycle where the board looks at a number of key projects in more detail than they would do during the normal performance reviews. And here I mentioned the bid approval. It's just important, so the whole review and process basically starts before actually any bid is sent to a potential customer. So we look at the project set up, the project organization, the accounting implications, the cash implications, the implications on our liquidity, guarantee set up, technological risks, all sorts of issues prior to actually handing out the bid document to the potential customer or the procurement agency, and every bid over 30 million has to go through this review process. It's all the central departments at group level or defense level. They look at it in addition to what the divisional entities have done, and then the final assessment is presented to the boards that then conclude whether this bid is sent out or not. And that's the first step, and then there's this review process is along the line as the project develops. So much for the internal review process, and as I mentioned, we also have an external audit all the time, basically almost continuously, and just want to kind of highlight a bit what for us as a commercial company are the issues that our auditors look at when they audit projects. So they are accounting driven with the percentage of completion, but there are lots of questions that they also look at that are not purely, that have accounting implications, but really are a result of the project setup and the project scope. Yeah? They look at the offset obligations, they look at commissions and how we acquired the contract, they look at the financial viability of the contracts, they look at possible penalties and other variable considerations, they look at our warranty obligations that might arise throughout the project, and they also look at all the financing issues in terms of how basically possible interest on the payments kind of need to be considered. With IFRS 15, basically the cash profile of the project has now really affected the accounting, and that is one of the challenges that we have, that we have for the same project lots of different numbers that are all correct but all in a different context, and I'll explain this a little bit further later on. So the auditors have, when they look at projects, quite a wide area of interest. What they look at, they look at it again, not just at how a number is calculated, sondern why is the number in the way the number is in our books. This kind of audit around the projects kind of embedded in the overall kind of audit approach that they have. Similar to all audits, it starts with a risk assessment. It's done only at group level, that is then kind of shared through audit instruction to the auditors of our entities. More or less 50 of our 100 entities are audited, because we have the other 50 are either too small or don't have any business at all. Then the risk assessment is then kind of enriched by the at local level. The internal control environment is assessed and tested, and for revenue and basically in projects, they do kind of journal testing that is normally a two-stage process. There's the first preliminary test in autumn that is then updated early in the following year, because on our timeline the audit at any local business needs to be completed in mid-January for the previous financial year, and in order to do this, they look at the projects through interviews, through review of contracts, documents, our internal project reports, mainly at the end of each year, between October to December, and then in January they conclude the audit and issue an audit opinion. Mainly, and normally first as an inter-office report to the group auditor, currently PwC in Düsseldorf, and then also an audit opinion on the local financial statements. Ideally at the same time, but sometimes there's some time lag, as I mentioned earlier. So that is really briefly what we do in other projects, and I thought we look into this concept on a specific project to look into how this basically translates to one specific case study. As mentioned earlier, Australia, and this is here a picture from one of our first deliveries of the product to the Australian Army, is currently our biggest single order, but it's also one of the most challenging that we ever had as Rheinmetall. What is this project? This project is a part of the Land 400 Phase 2 program of the Australian Ministry of Defence. That is, as part of this program, the Australian Army replaces their fleet of fighting vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles. Has gone through a long tender process, but it is, as I mentioned, is the biggest single order that we acquired throughout our history, and it's complex. One of the complexities is that Puma is, or the Boxer is actually is a joint development of Rheinmetall and KMW, and it's also normally sold through a separate legal vehicle. I'm not sure whether that applies, would be considered a letterbox entity, as some of these vehicles were called earlier, but it's definitely not an entity that produces anything. It's a project management entity that basically is the interface between the two entities and the customer. In the case of Australia, it was decided that Rheinmetall itself would be the main contractor, and that is in the end the first big project of a complete tank that Rheinmetall is.
5 minutes.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. It's a first complete tank that Rheinmetall is producing. In the past, it was always joined with somebody else. That's the first time we do this, basically as a prime contractor. That requires a big setup for our for the team. We have 10 main entities that are contributing in 4 different countries, and that view is a simplified view of the organization. The reality is even more complex, and there are more entities involved within our group. But these entities only contribute smaller bits. We have an integrated program team that operates in 2 locations, Hamburg and Brisbane. The places couldn't be further apart geographically. So geographical distance and basically also the fact that there are different time zones is an operational issue that should not be underestimated. When we look at it, we have a lot of challenges just to ensure that we have transparency throughout the project. We have a customer contract in 5 different currencies because Australian procurement regulations prohibit that hedging costs are included in the cost of the project. Instead, the customer says he will provide the currency as needed by the contractor. If it was just one entity that basically procures in different currencies, that would be relatively easy. But we have this situation that between the customer and paying us in dollars and our internal entity paying someone in dollars, there are 4 different countries and 4 stages of intercompany or the intergroup supply arrangements. So that is quite challenging just to ensure that the currency or the money flows through our group. As mentioned, we have 10 entities with major contributions in 4 countries, operating in 3 different currencies. They do the accounting on 3 different accounting systems. We have 4 different local GAAP. And every country has a different tax regime. The costing concept that was agreed for this project is different to what these entities normally do. And we have a lot of technical accounting topics that are rather complex that also need to be considered. I've just listed here a few, the standard revenue recognition, but hedge accounting as a consequence of the complexity with the currencies, and we have leasing and government grants that also need to be accounted for. One of the consequences is that it's challenging in terms to really understand what's going on. If you talk, the guys in our tax department, they look at totally different numbers than the guys in the accounting department. The controlling department, again, looks at different numbers because they want to have a kind of a uniform look at the project. The project management team looks at the uniform from their project perspective. So in the end, you can have, for the same issue, you can have 4 or 5 different numbers that are all, or sets of information that can all be correct, but are from a different point of view. So that is quite challenging, and we have we really have sometimes discussions about issues that are actually no issues at all. It's just that we didn't understand each other. And with this kind of international supply chain into the number of entities involved, we need additional information to basically ensure that we don't have just an aggregate of the individual performance of all the entities, but we have really a consolidated view across a group. So in addition to normal financial information, we need additional pieces of data to ensure that process. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what the issues are that we have to deal with in order to, in the end, present accurate financial information. That is one is basically a regulation around accounting and tax that makes it complicated, but we also have complications through divergence on customer requirements. And we have different procurement practices, we have different project management requirements, we have different expectations in terms of how the costing is done on projects, how they are calculated and presented. And we also have divergence in what the customer actually wants. You could say that he wants just some standard ammunition, but the ammunition that is then requested can be quite different, even though it's physically the same. And that is, wrong direction. That basically leads me to my last slide, just to highlight the complexity of standardization from our point of view. Earlier was mentioned that the European defense market suffers from a high level of fragmentation with a number of different systems, but even when it's actually the same product, we have a fragmented regulatory framework. you all know it from personal experience for consumer products, that you can have actually the same consumer product with the same packaging, the same set of instructions that is sold throughout Europe. This is the same product. No matter where you're going to sell it, you can just send the same package. That is not true for ammunition, even though in the end it's the same ammunition. But every country has different requirements, how it's labeled. It has different requirements how it is produced. It has different requirements how the production process is audited, and how basically lots are accepted by the customer. So in the end, we cannot, for these products, even though it's physically basically the same, we cannot produce and just sell from stock. We can only start production once we have the order. That leads to long delay between order and actually delivery. Depending on what the product is, it can be 12 to 18 months. And I always think that that it's it's possible to manage in a time when there is no crisis. But if there is a more strange situation, waiting 12 months for ammunition is maybe not the best situation. Okay, thank you very much, and I'm now happy to take questions.
I'm afraid we have time for one single question. Who wants to be that hero? Short question. Nobody. I'm sorry, Monsieur Bigot.
Okay, I have more than one, but okay. So I addressed 2.5, and you take the one you prefer. So one question is about the audit committee. We had some discussion in my organization about an audit committee. You didn't talk too much about the audit committee, so I'm a little bit curious about what is the interaction of this audit committee with the other audit task and audit that you are perform and or under control. My second one is about the tax authority. You mentioned you have different tax authority. Is there something that because we have to declare some VAT also in OCAR? Do you have some idea about how to simplify this? Not to use paper for Germany, for instance, or something like that. And then my third one is about price investigation. We in the public environment we talk about performance audit and accounting audit. You didn't mention this price investigation. Is there something also that impact the way you do the business?
I try to be brief. First, the audit committee is a subcommittee of the supervisory board. Has six members, and they basically engage the auditor. This is the subcommittee that is responsible for all interaction between the external auditors and the supervisory board. And I mentioned that we are actually currently tendering the audit for 2020, and it's the audit committee that is leading the process. So we are supporting the process, but it is clearly managed and led by the audit committee. VAT, you mentioned not using paper. It's tricky. You can submit your returns online and digitally, and in many countries it's also required to do it digitally, but you need to have, in many cases, still paper documents to. In the end, we do, to some extent, it's accepted from our point of view to scan the documents, and then if you have a reliable and kind of safe, secure scanning process, you can destroy the paper documents. Nevertheless, there are still some situations where our tax department says you still need to keep the paper document, because otherwise the tax authorities do not accept it. Strangely, there tend to be issues with smaller volume, but still, so there is still some part where we cannot destroy the paper documents. Otherwise, we try to do everything digitally, but it's a continuous discussion. The third one with pricing. In a previous version of the presentation, I did include the pricing audits. Is also something that happens kind of continuously. I didn't include it because it is one, for me, it's one part of a customer-driven audit. And pricing is just one of these audits that happen. The pricing audit is different in different in every country. It's even different in Germany, depending in what state the pricing audit is done. And then there are audits by the project, and there are additional reporting requirements. In the case of this Land 400 program, in addition to kind of normal program reporting, they also request something like earned value report, which basically is, rather than just providing information about the cash profile or the cost, it is kind of a way to assess the actual performance of the project. So that, yeah, I mentioned the different ways of looking at the same thing. That adds another dimension, and it also requires additional systems, and it's quite challenging to do for an international cross-border project. Yeah, but it is an issue. I thought this was complicated enough, so I left it out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neumann. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We can't afford to risk again to miss the panel, so I propose that we shorten coffee break. That's not a popular solution, but I mean, let's do it. 10 minutes past 4, please be there. And one piece of information, at the entrance, there is a conference desk. You can pick your attendance certificates if need be. See you at 10 past 4. Thank you.